Chapter 8 of Tractate Gittin covers some additional further laws of divorce and the delivery of the divorce document. The first Mishnah says, if a man throws a divorce document at his wife in her house or courtyard, she's divorced, as it's in her property. If he threw it into his own property while she's there, she's not divorced. If he threw it into her lap or sewing basket, she is divorced. The Gemara cites verses which source these laws of particular domains. Additionally, in regards to putting the document in her property, this is where the husband doesn't share it, as he had relinquished his rights to the property. Typically, such relinquishment of property is not allowed, so this must be where it was done during the initial stage of marriage or similar. Additionally, some add that there is no issue of this whatsoever, as technically they're married, so her hand would also be shared in ownership by the husband, which would be equally problematic. Therefore, this opinion would say that the divorce document and her independent ownerships occurs simultaneously. This is additionally qualified. It cites some particular incidents of these laws occurring. In regards to him tossing the document into her property, some clarify this to mean she actually must be there, at least beside her house or courtyard. Others say that she can be far away, and the dispute is like if her courtyard or house have a category of her hand or of her agent. Others say both agree it has the status of her hand, but they disagree if she needs to physically be there, attached to it, for it to be valid. There are related incidents mentioned. Additionally, in the husband's house, if the woman owns a bed inside, he can validly put the document on her bed. The particularities of this are discussed. In regards to tossing it into her sewing basket, some require it to be hanging off her, and similar. This would also apply to things similar to a sewing basket. New Mishnah. If the husband hands his wife a divorce document and says, this is a note of indebtedness, or if the wife just finds the divorce document lying around by him, it's not valid. The document must specify that it's given as a divorce document. Similarly, if he hands it to her while she was sleeping, it's not valid until he says that he's given her a divorce document. The Gemara suggests a clarification where she grabbed the document that was by him as to be where it was on his person, and he turned to her, essentially handing it towards her, and she took it from him. It brings sources for the validity of this logic. Also, if a man wrote a divorce document and gave it to his wife's slave who was sleeping while she guards him, it's valid. But not if he's awake, as then he's legally regarded in a similar status as a courtyard that's not under her control. Where it does work is clarified to be where he's bound, so he's classified similar to a stationary courtyard, which can acquire a divorce document for its owner. New Mishnah. If a woman was in a public domain and the husband throws the divorce document at her, if it's near her, she's divorced. If it's near him, she's not. And if it's right in the middle, she has a doubtful status. This would also apply by marriage and with debt, by tossing the money towards the individual if he acquires it or not. And if it's right in the middle, they split it. The Gemara defines these amounts as being within 4 cubits of either of them, and where it's half and half is where there's 8 cubits between them and the document extends into both of their 4 cubits. Some say it just means that whoever is closer. Some say it goes by who's able to guard it, and if both or neither can, it's half and half. There are additional points and points on these principles by marriage. An additional rule, if a husband hands his wife a divorce document, but there's a string attached in his hand, if it's strong enough that he could pull it back to himself without breaking the string, she's not legally considered to have been divorced, as he still partially controls the divorce document. Additionally, if her hand was open and positioned downwards and he threw it into her hand and it falls out, she's not divorced. If it then is destroyed before it hits the ground because there's a stream beneath her. New Mishnah. If the wife is on her roof and he's in his courtyard and he throws the divorce document up to her, she's divorced once it enters the airspace of her roof. If he was on his roof and she was in her courtyard and he threw it down to her, she's divorced once it leaves the roof's domain, even if it's destroyed before it hits the courtyard. The Gemara explains by the wife's roof, the roof is guarded, either as there's a fence around it or it's within 3 handbreadths, so it's considered to be a part of the roof, as it's within its airspace. By her courtyard, it's considered to be guarded, as the courtyard walls here extend above the roof. The remaining points are additionally qualified. It also describes some points as to how these laws differ from those of the Shabbos domains. Further, if there's a double courtyard, one inside another, with the inner one belonging to the wife and the outer one to the husband, and the outer walls are higher than the inner walls, and the husband tosses her divorce document to her, as the outer walls guard the inner walls, once the document reaches the airspace of the outer walls, she's divorced. This is additionally qualified. New Mishnah. There's a dispute if a man can divorce his wife with an old divorce document. An old divorce document is if the husband secluded himself with her after he wrote the document, but before he gave it to her. The Gemara says this dispute between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is on whether we're concerned the divorce will precede the conception of a child. Nevertheless, some hold that if the woman was given an old divorce document and remarried, she can stay remarried, and some allowed the remarriage to begin with anyways. New Mishnah. If somebody was in Babylonia and they wrote the date of the divorce document according to the reign of the Roman Empire, here referred to as the unworthy kingdom, or according to the kingdom of Media or Greece, or since the construction or destruction of the temple, or if he wrote it in the east and wrote it that it was in the west, or vice versa. If the woman had remarried on the basis of such a document, she must leave both her prior husband and her new husband and receive a divorce document from both, and does not pay her marriage contract or any of the forms of sustenance from either, and if she took sustenance from either, she must return it, and any new children born to her are considered to be illegitimate, a mamzer. If the husbands were kohanim, neither can become impure to bury her if she dies. Neither husband is permitted to her findings or earnings property. Neither can revoke her vows, and if she was not a Kohen, she can no longer marry one. If she was a Levi, she can no longer eat Meiser. If she was a Kohen, she can no longer eat Teruma. Neither heirs from either inherit her marriage contract, and each of her brother-in-laws will do Chalitza and cannot do Yibam. Similarly, all of this would apply if the scribe wrote either of their names or cities wrong. Additionally, this list of penalties apply if there was a woman whose brother-in-law passed, but they were one of the mentioned relatives, so they don't do Yibam or Chalitza, so her co-wife went and remarried without needing to do Chalitza, but they then found out the widow was an Ilonis, so their co-wife needed to have done Yibam or Chalitza, so their new marriage is void, and as mentioned, the listed penalties apply. Additionally, this would all apply if the widow married the brother-in-law through Yibam, and the co-wife married someone else, and then found out that the widow was an Ilonis. In additional case, if the scribe accidentally gave the divorce document to the wife and the receipt to the husband, which they then exchange, so they now both have the wrong document, and they found out what happened later on, all of the above penalties apply. Others say if they found out what happened immediately, there's no divorce, but if they found out later, the divorce is valid because the original husband shouldn't be able to invalidate the marriage of the second. The Gemara clarifies, the unworthy kingdom, as mentioned, refers to the Roman Empire, and they're called this because they didn't develop their own language or alphabet. The dates of the local monarchy are used in divorce documents so as to have peaceful relations with the monarchy. The remaining points are additionally clarified. This goes further and it also defines what classifies as immediately after the divorce or a while after, along with the remaining points. New Mishnah, if the husband wrote a divorce document for his wife but then changed his mind, Beis Shammai says he's disqualified her from marrying a Kohen. Beis Hillel says she's not disqualified even if he actually gave her the document, but conditionally, and the condition wasn't yet fulfilled. The Gemara cites some related incidents along with some points on tithes to show the descent of the greatness of later generations. New Mishnah, if a man divorces his wife and then stays in an inn with her, Beis Shammai says they don't need a second divorce document. Beis Hillel says they do if they divorced from the final stage of marriage. If it was from the earlier stage of marriage, they wouldn't be so comfortable and they wouldn't require a second divorce. The Gemara says some hold this dispute is where the witnesses actually saw them cohabit, and the debate is if this act was to remarry or if it was just done impermissibly. It debates this from other sources. Others say it's where the witnesses saw them seclude, as to if this creates a presumption of cohabitation. The remaining points are qualified. New Mishnah, a divorce document is written and signed very uniquely. A few lines are written, it's folded over and sewn shut, and the outside is signed by a witness. Then further is written, it's folded, sewn, and signed on the outside, etc. It needs 3 folds and 3 signatures. If one of such signatures is missing, the husband must divorce her new husband, and all of the earlier mentioned penalties apply. Some say anybody can sign the extra fold to fix it. Others say nobody disqualified except for relatives. This invalidation applies so long as there are more folds than witnesses' signatures. The Gemara says these issues apply in case the husband said all of you signed the document. It further explains the debate as to who can make the additional necessary signatures, and some say it doesn't apply if there is or are more than 4 folds and 3 signatures, in which case they would agree that disqualified witnesses, besides for relatives, cannot sign it. The remaining points are additionally qualified. There are additional points, and some even allowed a random slave from the street to sign this document to fix it. And that's the end of chapter 8.